Elias was just a boy in the eyes of the world, quiet and pale with sharp eyes that saw too much. He lived alone in a weathered farmhouse on the edge of a dying town, the kind of place people left behind and the kind of place where secrets stayed buried. The locals spoke of him in hushed tones. Some said he was cursed, others thought he was gifted. No one ever really knew, because no one got close enough to find. Utha's parents were gone. That much was true. They died in a car crash on a rainy night, their vehicle crushed by something that was never found. By something that left no marks except for one strange thing, a circle scorched into the pavement, as if something too hot for the world had touched down just for a moment and then vanished. Then Elias had not cried, had not spoken much, had not aged like other children. He was 13 for 3 years in a row, according to school records. His hair never grew longer, his clothes never wore out, and the machines in the nurse's office always glitched when he stepped in. Spent most of his days walking through the fields around his home, fields that used to belong to farmers who had long disappeared, swallowed by debts or fear, or both. Elias liked the quiet. He liked the way the wind carried voices from nowhere, how the birds sometimes flew in perfect circles above him as if orbiting something invisible and powerful. Truth was that Elias was not like other children, and he had always known it. He had memories that were not his and dreams that lasted for days. Sometimes he would wake up speaking languages that had no name, or humming melodies that made the glass in the windows shake and shatter. Kept a notebook under a loose floorboard filled with strange symbols and sketches of constellations that did not exist in any human atlas. At night, when the stars came out, he would sit on the roof and talk to them, not with words but with thoughts, and the stars, he was sure, sometimes answered. No one noticed when a black shape appeared in the sky above his house, silent and vast, like a wound in space. It hovered there without moving for hours, then days. Invisible to satellites and radars, cloaked in technology so advanced it bent light and thought alike. It belonged to them, to the ones who had been watching since his birth, to the ones who feared what he might become. Deep inside the ship, a creature stirred, born in fire, and engineered to kill. It was the first of 5, and it had never failed its mission. Before it studied the boy from above, its claws twitching, its mind already calculating the fastest way to end the target before the sun rose. But what it did not know, what none of them knew not yet, was that Elias was not afraid. He had been waiting for this moment since the day he was born, since the day the stars whispered his name, and the wind told him one day they would come, and when they did he would be ready. The creature moved like smoke through the air, silent and unseen, its form shifting with the wind, taking shapes that confused the eyes and unsettled the senses. It did not breathe, and it did not think as humans do. It simply existed to fulfill a purpose, to find the anomaly and eliminate it before it could awaken, before it could threaten the balance of power in the galaxy. Anomaly was Elias, the boy who should not be, the boy who carried something inside him that even the Empire could not understand, something born in the void between stars, something ancient and angry and forgotten. It landed just before midnight in the field behind the farmhouse, where the grass grew taller than a man and the soil was black from decades of neglect. It left no mark as it moved toward the house, no sound except a low hum like electricity just before a lightning struck inside the house. Elias was already awake, sitting on the floor of his room, surrounded by candles that did not burn with fire, but with cold blue light. The notebook lay open before him, filled with new symbols, ones that had written themselves during the dream. He just had a dream filled with fire and shadows, and something that called his name, not with a voice but with gravitas. Stood and walked to the door slowly, as if guided by something older than instinct. He stepped outside barefoot, the ground cold and soft beneath him. The wind had died, and the stars above were still, too still, like they were holding their breath. And he saw it, a shape at the edge of the field, blacker than the night around it, taller than any man, with limbs that bent the wrong way, and eyes that burned like dying suns. It did not hesitate. It moved toward him with terrifying speed, blades unfolding from its arms, slicing the air itself. Apatelius did not run. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply, the way the old dreams had taught him, and when he opened them again they glowed with a color that did not exist in any human spectrum, a color that made the assassin falter for the first time in its existence. The grass around Elias began to twist and grow, stretching upward as if trying to protect him. The air shimmered, the temperature dropped, the stars above flickered one by one, as if something far away had just woken up. Assassin lunged, its blades aimed at the boy's heart, but it never reached him, because in that instant the ground split open. beneath it not violently but quietly, as if it was always meant to happen, as if the earth itself had decided, no, not this one, not tonight. Creature let out no sound as it fell into the darkness, its body dissolving into nothingness. Its mission ended before it even. Baganilius stood alone, again the wind returning, the stars steady once more. He walked back into the house and closed the door behind him, not with fear but with calm, because this was only the beginning, and he knew they would send more of the Hatobacus. They were afraid, and he was ready. Days passed since the first assassin vanished into the earth, and the skies above remained quiet for a time, but the silence was not peace, it was planning the Empire had underestimated. The boy, once they would not do it again, this time they would try something different, something clever and quietly, sent her down in the dead of night. Not in a ship, but in a pod, small and smooth and silent, like a falling star. She landed far outside the town, disguised as one of them, shaped like a human, with skin and breath and eyes that could mimic sorrow. She walked through the streets with a smile that disarmed and a voice that invited trust. She called herself Miss Karen, and claimed to be a grief counselor sent by the state to help children like Elias recover from Tremoth Town, welcomed her the way people welcome anyone who seems normal in a world that rarely is. She was kind. She was soft-spoken. She brought pastries to the school office and laughed at the right moments, and soon, even the teachers began to believe that she cared. But Elias knew from the moment she stepped into the school hallway. He felt it not with his mind, but with the deep thing inside him, the thing that had no name, the part of him that remembered stars, exploding, and voices made of metal. He watched her from across the cafeteria, her every movement precise to precise, her every smile a little too slow to faddish, visited him during class one afternoon, asking gentle questions about his life and his dreams and the loss of his parents. He answered politely, quietly, playing the role of the broken boy, while she scribbled notes that meant nothing on a pad that recorded everything. That night Elias did not sleep. Instead he sat at the kitchen table drawing spirals in the wood with his fingertip. The spirals glowed faintly as he hummed the tune that had come to him in the last dream. The dream where the stars cracked open and something stepped through. Miss Caron came again the next day, and the day after. She asked about the symbols on his notebook and the strange plants growing behind his house. She asked if he ever felt different, if he ever heard things no one else could hear. Elias only smiled and said, not really. On the fourth day she followed him home, walking behind him with a silence that was not human. When he turned the corner near the field she revealed herself, her skin peeling away like cloth, her arms splitting into blades, her eyes glowing with the cold light of distant galaxies. She struck with lightning speed, her voice now layered with the sound of 1,000 machins. But Elias was faster, not with his body but with his mind. He spoke a word, a single word that did not belong to Earth, a word the stars themselves had whispered into his dreams, and the sound of it bent the air, shattered the clouds, and made her collapse screaming into dust, her last breath. A confused whisper. Half did not answer. He only stood there, as her ash blew away across the field. Second coffin was reddened. They were not learning. After the second failure the Empire grew restless. The council debated across systems. The stars themselves seemed to flicker in frustration, for never before had 2 elite assassins failed their mission. Especially not against a human child. The decision came quickly this time. Send 2 together twins, created not from flesh but from fire and smoke, born in a lab on a dead moon where nothing ever grew. They were called Var and Vec. Their minds linked by thought, their bodies fueled by heat and shadow. They did not speak, they did not sleep, they simply hunted and destroyed. They arrived in a meteor storm, hidden among falling rocks and cosmic debris. Burning through the atmosphere like angry gods, the sky above the town lit up for 7 long seconds, and then the ground trembled when they landed a mile from the boys' house. Their forms cooled from flame to armor, smooth and black, with no edges, like living obsidian. They moved without hesitation, cutting through forests and hills, leaving ash in their wake. Animals fled. The land itself grew quiet, as if nature had learned what the Empire had not. These things were not meant to touch the earth. Meanwhile, Elias sat alone in a diner on the edge of town, sipping chocolate milk and staring at the jukebox that had not worked in 10 years. He watched the waitress move in slow circles behind the counter, her thoughts loud and anxious. Though her lips never moved, everyone in the diner felt something strange, a chill, a weight, like the air itself had become thicker. When the twins reached the edge of the parking lot, the glass in the windows turned to dust, the lights flickered, and then went dark. The door swung open without anyone touching it, and there they stood, tall, silent, wrapped in heat waves, their eyes locked on the bueno. One screamed, no one moved. The fear was too deep to primal. Elias stood slowly, the milk still in his hand, and walked toward the door, each step quiet, each breath measured. The twins raised their arms, ready to strike the air, began to burn the ground beneath them. Crackadand. Then it stopped. Everything stopped. Time itself bent around the boy, his eyes glowing again with that impossible color, his voice low as he whispered another word, a different one, this time older, heavier, the kind of word that made gravity itself. Listenver, and Vec froze, not by choice but by law, the law written in the bones of the universe. The diner walls peeled away, revealing sky. The stars above blinked in response, and the ground swallowed the twins whole like the first, as if the earth had decided again that these things did not belong. Time resumed. Elias turned and walked back. Inside, the jukebox played a song no one selected, and the waitress cried without knowing why. Outside, the parking lot was empty again. No heat, no smoke, just silence. It. Third and fourth coffins rose into the sky together. 2 more failures, 2 more warnings sent into the stars, but the Empire was stubborn, and their pride was louder than their first. Boy waited, and he was beginning to remember more. The Empire was quiet after the twins were taken. Silence spread like fog through its halls, heavy with disbelief and something worse, uncertainty. This was not supposed to happen. A human child should not be capable of destroying their finest creations, should not even be capable of seeing them coming, let alone stopping them. And yet here, they were down for assassins, and still no closer to erasing the threat. Final assassin was not like the others. It was not built with weapons or armor. It had no body of its own, no form to hold or break. It was thought, and thought alone, a creature of dreams and mind, a being born from the collective nightmares of 1,000 worlds. It did not travel through space, it traveled through sleep, and so it came in silence, slipping past defenses. No ship, no landing, no arrival, only a shadow settling over the town. One evening, as the sun fell below the horizon like a dying fire, the people grew tired, their thoughts slowed, their eyes dimmed, and by midnight, everyone in town was dreaming the same dream. Boy stood alone in a field beneath a cracked red sky, surrounded by statues of the 4 assassins. He had already defeated all of them, twisted and frozen, their faces stretched in terror. The wind howled, but there was no sound, and above him hovered the thing. It had no shape, only presence. It pulsed like a dying star and echoed with voices that did not belong to the dead or the living. It did not attack, it spoke. Inside his mind, whispering doubts, feeding fears. It showed him visions of himself, alone in space, broken, empty, powerless. It showed him a future where he failed, where the Empire came and turned the earth to Destelius. Did not move, he did not speak, he simply watched the thing above him, letting it dig deeper into his thoughts, letting it wander through every corner of his mind, every scar, every wound, every fear he had buried since birth. And then he smiled. Bekos. This was his trapped creature, had entered his world, not the other way around, and in this place he was not the hunted here, he was the architect here, he was the truth. Sky shattered above them, the ground cracked beneath their feet, the statues burst into flame, and the creature began to scream, not with sound, but with thought, waves of pain and panic rippling across the dreamscape as Elias stepped forward with eyes like collapsing suns and spoke the final word, a word even the stars had forgotten. Then everything went quiet. Town woke as one, blinking under morning light, as if no time had passed. The people remembered nothing, only a strange feeling in their chest, like they had all narrowly escaped something they could not. Namin orbit around the Empire homeworld. A single pod appeared containing nothing but a pulse of energy, and a symbol etched into its walls, the symbol of the boy, and below it, a 5th coffin, empty and glowing, and waiting. And far below in his room, Elias opened his eyes, his heart steady, his breath calm. The stars no longer watched him, they listened. After the 5th failure, the Empire fell into chaos, not public chaos, not the kind that screamed through streets and burned banners, but the kind that whispered behind locked doors. The kind that made generals sweat and prophets stammer and leaders wake from dreams they could not remember but could never forget. 5 assassins gone, and nothing gained except fear and silence, and a name that now echoed across distant systems. Elias, the boy, the anomaly, the impossible. Leather were debates across sectors. Should they send more? Should they send armies? Should they burn the entire planet before it was too late? But the voices arguing the loudest were not the wisest. They did not understand what had truly happened. They only saw results, not the reason, but Some new, some very old minds hidden deep inside the Empire's core remembered ancient warnings written in dead languages across walls, buried beneath worlds. They remembered the prophecy that spoke of a voice, born from stardust and silence, of a child not entirely human, not entirely God, whose breath could bend fate, and whose thoughts could kill before the body move itself. They waited, unsure, unwilling to act without understanding, hoping the problem would solve itself from fear or accident, or time. But Elias was not waiting. Elias was changing day that passed. He remembered more dreams that were not dreams, songs that were not songs, words that tasted like metal and light. His body felt heavier but not slower. His steps left prints where others did not. His reflection shifted when he looked too long, and sometimes the wind spoke his name, even when the trees were still. Stopped going to town not because he feared the people but because he could no longer pretend he was like them. He did not age, he did not hunger, he did not need what they needed, and in the silence of his farmhouse, he found peace, and in that peace he began to build net machines, not weapons, but symbols, words, carved into stone, and burned into wood patterns, that hummed when the stars rose and pulsed when his heart beat. He was not sure what they did, only that they needed to exist, and that they were older than him and older than Earth. On night as he walked through the fields, he saw something above, a ripple in the sky like a scar healing in reverse, and through it a shape. Watching, waiting, but it did not cross through, it only stared, and he stared back, not with fear but curiosity. Because now he knew they would not send another. They had no more left to send. What waited now was not a hunt, but a meeting, a reckoning, something older and deeper than war, something that could not be stopped with weapons or mechanicias. Looked up, and for the first time he spoke without sound, his thoughts reaching through the stars, across systems, across light, across time. Come, if you must, he said, but do not come thinking I am alone. The sky answered, not with thunder but with suspense, kind of silence that waits before the universe changes. The message Elias had sent without words traveled farther than sound, farther than light. It rippled through space, like a forgotten song, waking old machines and older minds from their long slumber. Across the outer rim of the Empire, ancient beacons flickered to life, runes glowing that no one could translate. Ships, powered by dying stars, turned their course and pointed toward a single, small blue world spinning quietly on the edge of a forgotten arm of the Galaxian. The Empire halls, the high seat sat in silence, its face hidden behind a mask older than memory, its voice silent as its generals argued about retaliation, about surrender, about escape, but none of them noticed that the stars around their worlds were beginning to dim one by one like candles snuffed by an unseen wind. Back on Earth, Elias stood at the center of a circle made of stone and fire behind his farmhouse, in the place where nothing had ever grown, not grass, not trees, not even weeds. Now that place pulsed with energy that did not belong to this world. The symbols he had carved began to glow without flame, floating slightly above the ground, spinning around him like planets around a star. Was not afraid. He was not angry, he simply understood that the time for waiting had ended. The silence had spoken and something was coming. Looked up and saw a figure standing at the edge of the field. Not alien, not armored, not monstrous, just a man, or something shaped like one, wearing a dark coat, eyes glowing faintly like distant moons, skin too smooth to be real. He said nothing. He only stepped forward slowly, like someone visiting a place they once called home. Elias did not speak either, but he knew this was not another assassin. This was something different, older, higher, maybe even the first one who had ever spoken his name before he was born. Man raised a hand, and the world around them slowed. Birds froze in the air, wind hung still like painted fog, even the sound of insects stopped as if time had forgotten how to move. They stood a few feet apart, watching each other not as enemies, but as mirrors, pieces of something broken long ago, trying to find their shape again. You are not what they think you are, the man said, not in voice but in thought. You are not what you think you are, Elias answered with silence, his eyes glowing brighter now, the field around them cracking under unseen pressure, the runes spinning faster, now heat rising. But he did not move. You are a key, the man said, and a door and a weapon and a question. You are not meant to exist, but now that you do, nothing can be as it was. Elias finally spoke, not in words but in thought as deep as the ocean and as quiet as death. Did not ask for this, I only survived. The man smiled, not cruel, not kind, just knowing. Then everything around them broke apart. The stars split the ground, opened the sky, shattered into lightened. The sixth visitor was Coffin, this timidly ash. After the sixth visitor vanished, The world did not return to normal. It could not. Something had shifted, something fundamental. Like a door once closed had been opened and could never be shut again. Elias felt it in the sky, in the soil, in the way. The stars blinked slower than before, as if time itself was holding its breath, waiting for something no one could name it. Town near the farmhouse began to change. People grew quiet. The birds stopped singing. The air felt heavier every day, and though no one spoke it aloud, they all knew the boy in the old house was the reason, or the center, or maybe just the beginning. Across the galaxy, the Empire began to fracture, not from war, not from rebellion, but from silence. Systems disconnected, ships stopped. Responding outposts sent one last transmission before going dark. Always the same message, a single phrase repeated in hundreds of languages. The boy is awake within the deepest chamber of the Empire. A hidden archive long sealed by code and blood unlocked itself and revealed something no one remembered, placing a file without origin, marked with the symbol of a spiral, surrounded by 5 stars and 1 eye. The file contained no words, only images, visions of futures twisted by a presence impossible to predict. Every version ended the same, a world undone by a child whose voice could break the rules of reality. In the farmhouse, Elias stood before the mirror for the first time in weeks, but the reflection did not match him anymore. The boy he once was had faded behind a shape that flickered between flesh and light, between memory and prophecy. He was no longer simply a boy, no longer simply human. That night, he walked to the center of the field, barefoot beneath a sky filled with stars that no longer seemed distant, each one pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He whispered something, not in sound but in meaning, and the wind responded, not with gusts but with understanding. Ben, the stars moved on by one. They shifted in the sky, changing position, forming a symbol seen only once before by ancient eyes, on a dead moon, a spiral of alignment, a celestial map pointing not to a place, but to a moment, a convergence that had now begun above the earth. Something appeared, not a ship, not a weapon, not a being but a presence, a shape without form, casting no shadow, making no noise, seen only by those who had touched the truth. It hovered above the atmosphere, watching not as an enemy but as a witness, and Elias looked up into the presence and spoke without voice. "You were never coming to kill me." He said no. The presence answered, "We came to see if it was true, and is it yes, then they will come with thee, already arraigned." Then the stars blinked again, and everything felt closer. 5 coffins had been returned, but the war had never been about assassin Tet, had always been about awakening Gand. The galaxy had just realized it was far too late to stop it. The stars no longer watched in silence. They trembled, not with fear but with memory, as if something buried for eon had begun to stir. The name Elias was now spoken across the void, not as a warning but as a signal. Systems, once loyal to the Empire, began to disconnect, not by force but by choice. Leaders vanished from sight, and machines that had served for centuries turned themselves off without command, leaving behind only the sound of absence. In Earth, the boy stood at the center of a storm, without clouds, a field that no longer obeyed gravity, where the grass grew in spirals, and the wind moved in reverse, where animals gathered in circles, and looked not with confusion but with reverence, as if they had always known he would come. Eyes saw beyond matter, beyond shape, beyond time. He no longer needed words. His thoughts echoed across frequencies that had not existed until now, and everything that had tried to kill him had become part of him. Their knowledge, their fear, their final questions absorbed and understood above him. The sky split one last time, but it was not an invasion, it was an arrival. A great vessel shaped like memory and light descended, not to conquer but to kneel. Its hull, covered in symbols that matched those in the notebook he had once hidden beneath the floor, now burned into the soil around him. In a language lost before history began, from the vessel stepped no army, only one figure, tall and faceless, wrapped in something that shimmered between metal and smoke. The air around it folded and unfolded like time was uncertain of its place. But Elias did not move, because he knew who this was, or what it was, or what it had once been. "You are the first and the last," the figure said in thought, not voice. "You are what we tried to erase before it began, and yet here you are, unchanged and unstoppable." "Did not create me," Elias replied. "I was born because you feared I would base, and in fearing you, we ensured you would come." The earth pulsed, the stars aligned above into the spiral once more, and the final sequence began. Not a weapon, not a war, but a resonance, a pattern, unlocking something older than galaxies, something inside Every world, every mind, every living thing waiting to be awakened by the voice that could speak to the bones of creation. Elias closed his eyes, and the wind stopped, and the stars stood still, and the grass no longer bent under his feet. He breathed once, and that breath carried through every particle of air and space like a whisper of truth. Vessel vanished without sound, without trace, and the presence within it left, not defeated but fulfilled, because its purpose was not destruction but confirmation. In the town, no one remembered what had changed, only that they dreamed less often and slept more deeply, and sometimes when they looked up at the sky, they felt peace and wonder without knowing why. And on the farmhouse porch the boy sat watching the stars as they shifted into new shapes and new songs, and new meanings had returned. The Coffins, he had answered the silence, and now he was the one they would wait for.